Hi, and welcome to That Cancer Conversation, the podcast from Cancer Research UK that brings together the science and the stories behind cancer, with me, Sophie Wedekind. In this episode, we're continuing to explore the world of cancer vaccines. In our first episode, I spoke to Dr Heather Shaw, a clinical skin cancer doctor and researcher at University College London, about what cancer vaccines are and how they work. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I'd highly recommend hearing that one first and then coming back to this episode. In this next part, I'm exploring how we can get cancer vaccines to our clinics. And joining me today is Dr Lennard Lee, a medical oncologist treating prostate cancer, associate professor at Oxford University, senior national clinical advisor for cancer vaccines, and medical director of EIT Institute of Technology. Lennard, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sophie, for bringing me on to talk about this really exciting topic.
Yeah, cancer vaccines is really exciting. A lot of buzz around cancer vaccines at the moment. But, just mentioning, we have our first episode. We spoke to Dr. Heather Shaw about what are cancer vaccines. And so briefly, we've kind of uncovered, we've got 200 different types of cancers. There are many, many different types of cancer vaccines out there. But briefly, what type of cancer vaccines are out there or being researched at the moment?
The most amazing thing about this field is it's just exploded into life. I wouldn't have thought that I would be here talking about this, but what we've seen is that this technology can be developed very, very quickly. So we've all lived through this period in 2020 when they said it's not possible. You can't make a vaccine in less than 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, but it happened really quickly. And we've got new technologies which allow you to just update it very quickly from if you think back to the pandemic one, it went from the alpha to beta to Omicron. Now you can update it to put cancer blueprints in there too. So the broad categories are, it can be fixed, just like you and me probably got the same Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine or the same Pfizer vaccine, or it can be the space age type, which Heather may have talked to you about, which is personalised. That's really science fiction. That's where they take the cancer out, they sequence it, and they make you a vaccine which is bespoke for you, personalised for your cancer, because all cancers are different, but this cancer is personalised for that vaccine. And that's what's causing a lot of promise at the moment. And this whole research field that no one saw coming.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the COVID pandemic and the kind of how fast we saw a COVID vaccination coming through and different types of COVID viruses being targeted from those vaccinations. And I think we spoke to Heather about cancer vaccines aren't necessarily going to work the same way. Is that correct?
So I think they've been working slightly different ways. But you're right, it does all come out from all that investment going around the world. And the UK was a fantastic leader in this space. We pumped money into the research field. We got research sites up and running. And we showed what was possible. You can do things in a much shorter time scale than ever. So I think the silver lining is this new technology. But you're right. The pandemic vaccine prevented us getting sick from COVID. A cancer vaccine in its current form is being tested to stop the cancer coming back. So after surgery, after we think we've got most of the cancer, but there may be a few stray cells about, what a cancer vaccine does is it basically trains your own security system, your immune system, to hopefully go around and mop up these remaining cells. It's basically like a wanted poster for your cancer to say, if there's anything left behind, please just mop it up so you don't need any more treatments in future.
And then is that key technology that you're talking about, is that mRNA? Is that the main thing that's kind of driven this progress within cancer vaccines?
Yeah, there's been so many gifts since 2020 because the vaccines that we all got when we were children were very, very old style, just what we call protein vaccines, where you mush up a bit of the bacterial virus, put it into your arm, and that's all we got. But what we've had in 2020 is this new research and new technologies, two of them which I would probably just mention. A viral-like vaccine like the Chadox that Oxford University came up with AstraZeneca, and then this mRNA where you're just giving the instruction manuals to what a cancer might look like, and that becomes the wanted poster that primes your security system or immune system to start mopping it up. That's a really interesting field.
And you're you're heading the NHS Cancer Vaccine Launchpad. Did I say that correctly? What is that? First of all, what is the NHS Cancer Vaccine Launchpad, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, so the NHS Cancer Vaccine Launchpad is a fantastic thing, and it was my greatest honour to help try and co-design it with so many great scientists and clinicians around the country who are now delivering it. It's basically our system and our approach to make sure that we can get large numbers of people into cancer vaccine trials. I guess the problem that I was trying to solve was that you used to just have research centres, the big ones like Oxford University, Cambridge University, all the London ones, Marsden and Christie, and that was it. And if you've been treating other centres, like the smaller ones, like down in Devon or Hull, you could never partake in trials. And that's not right. And we saw in 2020 this can be changed. If you think back to the vaccine trials then in the pandemic, everyone in the country could participate. You used to put your hand up and the hospital would deploy. So what the NHS Cancer Vaccine Launchpad was designed to do from the outset was to start referring people into the centres. So you could be treated in a neighbouring hospital, which we might be called slightly smaller ones, and you'd be funneled into a big one. And they'll also get the genetic sequencing and the trials. And this is a complete game changer in terms of what's possible. It largely ties back into the broader national advance that we've been trying to achieve here, which is to make sure that we get 10,000 people through cancer vaccine trials across many different types, and again show leadership, because all scientists and scientific fields need leadership. And what's absolutely fantastic is that CR UK, Cancer Research UK, was there from the start. They put a little signal out along with government officials and NHSE and NIHR and all the research scientists coming together and say, we want to pioneer new technologies. We know that we're good at vaccine research. Let's be good at cancer vaccine research. And that's where we got to. And actually, how many years are we down now? 4 years down the line. And we are flying ahead now. We're leading in so many different areas, and barely a month go by without you hearing about the latest centre opening in Wales and Scotland, in Dundee, in Manchester, in Oxford, in Birmingham. It's all fantastic, and it's fantastic leadership.
And I guess because more people are able to partake in these trials, that means that we're getting results a lot faster. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's a special thing about clinical trials. I do clinical trials, but there's no secret about the speed. Basically, the faster you put people through, the more people come forward, the more the sites you want to open, then it becomes a bit quicker. And actually, it's something that everyone wants to partake in. What I think is the most amazing thing about cancer vaccines is that the patients are asking the doctors about it. So I have to say, actually, yes, I'll try and find you someone who's doing this in this area, or we'll go find a bit more about how you can participate. And actually, what's amazing here is that people have been starting to talk to the press about how their lives have been changed by participating, because it used to be quite rare that the best in class research or cancer vaccine from anywhere in the world comes to the UK and it goes into an NHS site and you get an injection in the arm. But that's now an everyday reality in the UK from 2022 onwards in the cancer vaccine space. The best technologies is coming to our greatest cancer centres. Every cancer centre can participate, and the patients are getting it, and they're talking the news. And of course, this fantastic feedback loop where more and more research is happening in the UK, more and more effective cancer research is being done. And actually, when you do that, success begets success, and more technology will come to the UK. And the more research we do, the faster developments will happen.
And that's great, because, one of the big questions that I think a lot of people ask is, when are we going to see cancer vaccines coming to clinics? That's like the huge, big question. Like, when am I going to be able to use a cancer vaccine or see it be used in people?
Yeah, great question, Sophie. So there are just 3 phases of clinical trials. Once you've got through all 3 phases, then you know how effective it's going to be. The first one is safety. And what's really good is that all these cancer vaccine trials are flying through the safety experiments. They are safe. They're as safe as the pandemic vaccines. I think people get maybe, those flu-like symptoms that you and me probably got, not feeling quite right for a day or two. But that's probably nothing compared to what people are going through at the moment with the therapies they're getting. I treat people, and chemotherapy can be tough. It can be tolerated very well, and we shouldn't scare people. But some people do find it very tough. But on vaccines, most people find it okay. So I guess the second phase becomes checking for a signal, and the third phase is the final phase. We're now hearing that some of the phase 3 studies have closed. So we're just waiting for the results there. So I would forecast, my crystal ball's not very good, Sophie. I would say by the end of 2025, this year, we will probably know which one is going to be working. And there may be someone around the world who will get the first jab outside a clinical trial. Very worst 2026. But if you think about that, that is stunning. That's within half a decade of the first mRNA technology going global. Maybe within 5 years, we might get another one going global again, but this time targeting new disease in cancer, which is a big problem, and actually one where we could make a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing that, within the end of this year, 2025, or the beginning of 2026, that feels so soon to get something so life-changing, because like you said, the symptoms could be maximum flu-like symptoms, which for a lot of people who may have experience going through chemotherapy, that is a huge difference in terms of what people would have to go through in terms of getting their cancer treated. So to have that so soon feels really hopeful. And do you think that that sort of speed is very unique to the UK compared to other countries worldwide? Or are we seeing similar sort of looks and similar sort of setups within other countries looking at cancer vaccines?
I think the UK is fantastic for research. And the reason for this is because we're all just one healthcare system. We're a single NHS, and actually all the medical oncology community and all the whole oncology community is very well connected because Events CR UK does, Cancer Research UK does, NIHR does, and therefore we talk. And what's amazing here is that there's been very clear and effective leadership from the UK. It comes out from the BBC about our National Advance for Cancer Vaccines to get 10,000 people through. Everyone's talking about it. The sites are opening very quickly. And we're not having to go by a region by region opening or a insurer by insurer opening, which you may get in other countries like the States. The public healthcare system means that everyone receives a good standard of care. They get it well. And if you want to participate in research, you can do. And there are many great centres which are doing that. So I think it is unique in the UK. But this doesn't mean that other countries shouldn't emulate. I know that other countries are trying to open quickly. And we saw a recent announcement of Donald Trump at his new inauguration, where he said he wants America to play their part now. And it's fantastic. We want the Americans to join. But they're coming a little bit late. They have to play catch up. But that's all great because the faster we know, the more people get into the trials, the faster we know the results, and we will know for sure whether these cancers will work, the cancer vaccines work, and how effective they are.
And we have big pharmacology companies that like Moderna. Are Moderna a US company? So I guess they play a big part in cancer vaccine development, especially because of mRNA technology.
Yeah, that's right. So there's this lovely partnership and collaboration where a country signals its need and the patient communities and say what you want them to try and develop drugs against. And there are many great companies which did a lot for us. I mean, they gave us our freedom. They gave us freedom to go outside and to know that actually we've got over the pandemic, we're now all safe. So there are companies like Moderna, which is a big American company, with MSD, another big American one. You've also got BioNTech, a German company, and they're all ploughing all the resource they did to see their next major benefit. And I think I feel really glad as an oncologist treating my patients and just saying, actually, now the investment's coming to your area now, and hopefully we'll see benefits. Maybe it might just reduce that cancer coming back. Maybe people are to sleep better at night because they know that their immune system is now active and searching for that cancer. So they're great companies, and I'm really looking forward to the results.
So it is more of a worldwide collaboration, the kind of quest to deliver cancer vaccines into clinics. In terms of, clinical trials taking place, I know we've had multiple headlines talking about different sorts of cancer vaccines coming through, targeting lung cancer, ovarian cancer. We had Dr. Heather Shaw talking about skin cancer, melanoma. So in terms of those sorts of trials, which ones are you seeing coming down the line first? And, what kind of other developments of other cancers are we seeing start to be developed in a vaccine form?
So there are many different cancer types being targeted at the moment. We're seeing And I tried to count them all, actually. I think there are at least 20 types being targeted.
Wow.
So you've got gullet cancer or OGD from Dundee. You've got London doing lung cancer vaccines, Liverpool head and neck cancers. They're all being covered at the moment, which is fantastic. It basically shows the versatility of this type of treatment. You can just reprogram it, print it again, update it, and give it to a person and test it. And that's what's amazing about this technology. It can just be updated so quickly, and all you've got to do is get it into a patient trial, and then you'll know how safe it is. It does look quite safe, and therefore they're going through phase 1 quickly. You've just got phase 2 and phase 3 before you know.
And what is the thing that gets updated? Is it almost this vaccine formula that then has that added specialized part to it, the DNA part to it, that is different for each one?
Yeah, so and if you think of mRNA as like an instruction code, just like a string of what we call sequences, most of that sequence stays the same. It basically tells the immune system where to take the mRNA, how to make it, and all you need to do is change a little bit in the middle, which is a bit which it says what your immune system should recognize. You just update that, manufacture another one, and then make sure it's targeted to the right cancer. You have to use a lot of AI, therefore AI is coming to the fore now. You're seeing lots of technologies come to the fore, like AI, genomics, and vaccines, all coming together to help cancer patients. And then once you give that to a patient, you've effectively got a heat-seeking missile, which allows your immune system to recognize what the cancer could look like. So it's just a little bit in the middle.
So you mentioned earlier you've got fixed vaccines, which was a lot like the COVID vaccine. So that covers all sorts of variations. We had like different strains of COVID, and also covers different people as well. So one type of vaccine can be used for many different people. And then cancer vaccines, it's more personalized. So, we're using specific mRNA from specific people's vaccines, cancers. Would you say that it's more expensive to make those sorts of vaccines compared to something like the COVID vaccine?
That's a good question. Well, there's 2 different types of vaccines. The mass-produced one, where it's off the shelf, everyone gets the same one. Those will probably be very cheap to get, actually. They're easy to make because they're just mass-manufactured. Everyone gets the same. In terms of, you probably pushed me about how much that's going to be. Well, we know we've lived to an episode where we all got the same vaccine. The NHS got it all for us and we had those jabs. The cost price to the country at that stage wasn't much. It was just a couple £100. If maybe even just £100, some type cases. So it wasn't much. But you're right. When you go for the truly personalized approach where you need to sequence the cancer, you put it through an AI algorithms to design it, and you print off a personalized one for you, that's going to cost a bit more. But I'll balance that because it already costs so much for cancer care already. The drugs that we use at the moment are really expensive to make. Vaccines, by comparison, can be manufactured quite easily. So there's going to be a balance, and actually the next few years will tell us what that balance is going to be, and hopefully it won't be too much. But what's clear is that the price point could be very similar.
What kind of conversations need to be had, I guess, after these phase 3 trials to start to get them into clinics?
So for any drug, you've just got a few simple steps. So let's say the trial works and it stops cancer coming back by 30%, reduces the likelihood, or 50% or 80%. We don't know at this stage how effective it's got to be. The next step after that is that the company's got to look around the world and work out which countries have need. I think we have a cancer problem in the UK, therefore we will be one of those countries which they'll probably want to be open to supplying to. We've got to have a regulator which is able to be agile and quick. And actually, what we've seen in recent years since 2020 is the MHRA is really coming into fore now. It's a really successful organisation. It's taking its freedoms and approving drugs in a very effective way. So our regulators got to approve, and they're regulating much faster and approving drugs as safe to use much faster than other regions like the European Medicines Agency, which is great. And after that, it goes into the accountants. I guess they'll be called NICE or the Cancer Drugs Fund, and they've got to count all the beans and say, okay, we can afford this or we can't afford this, and then come back to us. That process, I don't know how long that's going to take, really. Although the Cancer Drugs Fund has been working really well to get people innovative drugs very quickly.
And also, just to touch, I know we had in 2023, I think it was, that we had that announcement of the government and BioNTech opening up centres. Is this something that has fed into the cancer vaccine launchpad, or is this something that you guys have a relationship with? Or is this also a separate thing that is on top of what the NHS Cancer Vaccine Launchpad is doing?
And they're all the same thing, actually, Sophie. The collaboration across the board in this community is unparalleled, fantastic, and this shows why cancer research is such an amazing thing, because what you're able to do is get huge levels of collaboration when we have a shared mission. We want to get approvals and assess cancer vaccines in a shorter time frame as possible to benefit patients. We want to get 10,000 people through. We want to see benefits across the board. So to achieve that, you need people to work together. You need a company willing to invest in the UK and fly their drugs into the UK, into our leading centres, and invest in terms of our research nurses, our hospitals, our trialists, because they're important. We need staff to do this. We need to get the patient community enthused, and that's what's amazing about this cancer conversation, that the patient communities are so vocal in support of it. They want to get these trial activities UK. You need officials, be it government or national public bodies, to be supportive and say, actually, this is important for our country. We can give the world the cancer vaccine as well as the COVID vaccine, and we're very good at this. And the NHSE needs to make sure you've got all the referrals, so you've got equality across the board. BioNTech is very much a first partner for the cancer vaccine launchpad. Hopefully there'll be many others too. And they're running bowel cancer trials across the country. So if you were to Google cancer vaccines, you're going to see bowel cancer come a lot with the NHS cancer vaccine launchpad. But it's a great endeavour. Across this nation, everyone is collaborating, working together. And what we're seeing is that British spirit of collaboration and can-do attitude in 2020 is happening again in 2025 and has continued for the last few years and will hopefully lead us in good stead going ahead.
And that's really positive to hear, because I think, especially from a researcher's perspective, we've had, Brexit, and, some of the effects of Brexit have been this not knowing about where funding is coming from and if it's coming into the UK or not. And I think, it's great to hear that cancer vaccines, the UK are leading that in a way and are at the forefront of delivering some of the first cancer vaccines outside of a phase 3 clinical trial, like over all those clinical trials. And so in terms of what 2025 is going to bring, I know you do the Cancer Vaccine Bulletin on LinkedIn. So it's a newsletter which keeps people up to date on all sorts of cancer vaccine news that is out there, because there is just so much out there, and it continues to build and build and build. What are some of the, biggest or most memorable stories that you've come across in terms of cancer vaccines, or what have been the most monumental, would you say, across this cancer vaccine journey for us?
There's been so many, Sophie. The bulletin reaches out to thousands of people across the world and tries to pull everyone together to say, this is the endeavour, let's all support it. And it just gets bigger every month, which is great. I think the images change the world. And we all saw that image of Margaret in Coventry, the first person who got her COVID vaccine. That was in Coventry. She was surrounded by NHS nurses and doctors and healthcare assistants. And she represented freedom, so we can all go out and we can have this conversation, which I didn't think we'll ever have. I thought we'll be locked up forever, but thankfully we're out and I'm away from the front lines, and so I can deal with my cancer patients again. But the image, have a look at the images of patients with cancer now, because we're seeing the same thing happen again. People who are getting jabs in their arms, and you'd see the jabs in the arms and nurses giving it again and the patients benefiting, and they look happy. They look happy because they've volunteered their time, their lives to help every other patient after them. So, yeah, that is incredible. And then they go into the press and they talk about how their family felt more hope because technology was coming from across the world into their little old hospital, which may not have been part of the Cancer Vaccine Launchpad, and they were getting jabs, and they became part of this bigger movement, which is cancer research, because outcomes can continue to improve. Survival can continue to improve. The anxiety can be reduced. Side effects can be reduced as long as we embrace new technologies and research. So I think it's those pictures, and look at the pictures, look at their eyes, because this is hope. This is benefit to people, and everyone's doing this to benefit people with cancer, because it's a difficult disease to face, but there is lots of hope out there.
And I remember it just reminded me of a story that Heather told me, which was one of the first patients that got the melanoma vaccine. He wrote a whole album about it, inspired by this idea of having a vaccine which can prevent his skin cancer from coming back. And I think you're right, there's something really hopeful about the thought of having a simple vial just changing so many lives, like it did with the COVID pandemic. I think to have something like the COVID pandemic be one of the kind of first dominoes to lead to preventing future cancers is quite extraordinary to kind of think about in its whole grand scheme of things.
It is. I think it makes me feel really happy that there will be a silver lining. We all went through so much. I went to the front line, I was deployed. We saw terrible things that we never want to see. But actually the benefits now is going to be for people with cancer. So the technology shifts, the resources move, and now we're seeing this silver lining start to emerge. And we just need to see where it goes. The trials will show how effective it is, and it'll be absolutely wonderful. But I also look to the future, Sophie, because this is treatment of cancer vaccines to stop the cancer coming back. But I think a whole new sphere may open up. Do you mind if I suggest?
No, go for it, please.
We have prevention vaccines.
Yeah.
Because we have a few prevention vaccines at the moment. So like if you're going through school at the moment, you'll probably get your HPV vaccine, which stops your risk of getting this type of cervical cancer by 90%. I think there's a future now where the number of preventative vaccines may go up. So I hope one day I will live through a period whereby everyone, say at the age of 30, gets a vaccine across 10 cancer types. Or maybe at the age of 50 or even 70, something that stops cancer in its tracks before it even begins. If you can prime the immune system, then it could do amazing things. And many people go through life never getting cancer, and we don't know why that is. Is it because they're just born with an immune system that can recognize cancer, and therefore the rest of us lack that wanted poster? And can our vaccines now give us this knowledge? That'd be incredible. So let's see where the next 10 years is going to take us, because if 5 years can take us to that preventative vaccine to stop the cancer coming back, where will 10 years take us? That will be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does sound like science fiction coming to life, which is, I think, the thing that everybody feels so hopeful about. And in terms of what is coming next in cancer vaccines, I know you've mentioned the idea of where could we be in 10 years' time. What about at the end of 2025? What are you most excited about happening in this next 12 months in cancer vaccines?
I'm really excited about seeing that first jab, the first approved jab, because as Heather's noted, the melanoma study has finished the phase 3. Therefore, we're just waiting for the results of that. At some big congress, we're going to know about how effective it was. I think they said it's about 40% reduction in terms of the cancer coming back. So that's fantastic. Does that equate to what's happening in the phase 3 study? And then we're going to have to look around the world, because we're going to have to look at which countries are confident, capable, future-facing, who can go ahead and say, actually, if the technology works, I want it for my population. I want to get that first jab in. I'd like to think that's the UK, because we did give the world the first COVID vaccine outside the trial, both the Pfizer and the Oxford AstraZeneca. We were the world's first for that. I'd be really interested to see that happen. I think that's a big moment, because what the world will be looking at is that within 5 years of the most difficult situation the world's ever been through, humanity's moved that knowledge and learning into the cancer sphere, and we have a regulated product which is approved. And that jab will be something that I think will be absolutely wonderful. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know which patient it's going to be. I don't know which hospital it will be. I don't even know which country it's going to be. But I hope that this will be an NHS patient with an NHS nurse putting their arm in an NHS hospital surrounded by all those people again.
So almost recreating that COVID jab image, but for a cancer vaccine.
Why not? We've done the work. We've done all the trials. We were going to help prove it. I heard Heather telling me that trial recruited a year ahead of schedule, largely because the UK over-recruited. So it's fantastic. That's an exciting moment for me.
And I think something I just really want to touch back on is collaboration. You mentioned how important and collaboration has been, not only in terms of our NHS have one system, so we can collaborate with different sort of facilities to host more and more participants in trials, and also having different countries as well, and being collaborators with those. In terms of moving forward, do you think worldwide collaboration is going to be really important to get cancer vaccines from these phase 3 trials into the arms of everyday patients?
Collaboration is really important because cancer doesn't just affect people in Oxford or London. It's a global problem. And actually, when you look at countries which are developing and spreading their wings, they also have cancer because people are living longer. And as you live longer, you're more likely to have what we call mutations and then cancer happening. So this is a global problem. It's a global problem that we can actually fix. And actually what's interesting is that you can focus your energy and efforts in anything in life, be it global warming, defense, anything you can, education. But actually there's one problem that does affect between 1 in 2 to 1 in 3 of us. This is almost like an inevitability. And therefore global collaboration is more important. And therefore, any effort which connects countries, that connects doctors, connects patients is really important. And it's that shared mission which is fantastic. And again, all missions need a leader. The UK is leading this, but actually there can be many leaders because every country should be pioneering a technology field and become good at it because this will change lives.
And also, everybody and anybody can be affected by cancer and can get cancer. So just, like the COVID pandemic, it's a problem that affects everybody worldwide. Because of the cancer vaccines, the UK is such at the forefront of this, and other countries, like you said, the US, they have to catch up. What is the kind of, or in your opinion, what is the outlook on allowing these other countries to catch up?
It's the power of ideas, isn't it, Sophie? Like you bring out the best ideas in this cancer conversation. You start to talk about where there is opportunities. And actually, I've no doubt every single country will start to lean in very shortly. Many of them already are doing a fantastic job already in terms of recruitment and trying to see this technology through. Cancer research is global. So I don't think we need to incentivize people because the patient community is talking. And you see the press coverages of all of our centres just go global. CNBC just covers what's happening in the UK, which is great. And we're seeing fantastic work from America now about some of the bits they're doing in terms of breast cancer vaccines too. And I think ultimately it is the power of ideas. If we want to champion technology and see if it works, if you want our laboratories to look at this, and patients want it, then it will be so. And I think this is what's been absolutely fantastic about this field is that it's pulled people together. You've got collaboration across the board, big international conferences are happening, big events, and that's what's making it work.
And is government a big part of that as well, and those conversations?
It's a good point, actually. The UK government's been absolutely fantastic in this space. You've seen the press releases, you've seen them bring investment in, it's great. But there's also this interesting aspect in that they're responding to demands from the community. So when the Cancer Research UK community speaks with the patient groups, it's listened to. What's being seen in the press is listened to. So it's almost like a push and a pull here. We've ended up with a perfect push and pull here because the ground was fertile, everyone's ready. We've all lived through that period where every month discoveries were made. We saw that we can protect people, and actually that same spirit of determination being seen in the UK is being pushed into the cancer space, and that is great. So I think, yes, there is a role for government. Yes, there is a role for patients. There's also a role for doctors, and that's amazing. There's a role for everyone in this because everyone gains, our communities gain as a result of cancer research and this particular field.
And it's back to that collaboration thing again. It's really everybody's voices matter in pushing this
exactly
forward. And also, just to close off, what would you say to somebody who is not sure about cancer vaccines? And because, there are still people out there who aren't quite sure or don't fully trust the idea of vaccines. What would you say to them in terms of what you've seen and also what you see in the potential of cancer vaccines?
I think it's okay. It's completely okay, isn't it? Everyone's allowed to have their views and have their questions. And I think you're right. When I give any drug, I can cause a side effect. Even a paracetamol can be allergic to someone, and therefore, but the side effects can be very, very rare. So I think what I would say is that if you're in a position where, let's say we fast forward in 2026 now, you've got melanoma, the vaccine's ready, Heather tells you she can design a vaccine for you bespoke to your cancer and immune system and then fly it into you and it's perfect for your immune system. I think you should be asking the questions with the doctor. What's the side effect? How many people might get it? What's the risk? And but also ask the other question too, which is that if I don't get it, what's the risk? So I might not get that sore arm, but what's that likely in terms of that cancer coming back? Mm-hmm. And then you weigh that balance out because there's never a right answer in terms of cancer care. All you can do is take the information available. So I think being hesitant about treatment is right, but have that trust with that doctor. Just ask them. And the doctor will always answer. We're there to give you all the information you need. And then we go through all the consent forms, the patient information leaflets, helped by Cancer Research UK. And I'm pretty sure one day there's going to be a Cancer Research UK consent form which says the personalised cancer vaccines, this is the benefits, this is the risk. And then we'll take the time to go through it with you.
That would be a great day to see as well.
Fantastic.
To have a Cancer Research UK funded cancer vaccine, not only one for treatment, but for prevention. I mean, there's so much potential within this field. And I think that's the really exciting thing. And I think the big thing people should take away is that there is hope and there's excitement and slowly but surely can beat cancer. Yeah. And would you say cancer vaccines could help beat cancer?
I think I don't know, to be honest, but I hope it might do. The Cancer Research UK leadership was there from the outset. Michelle and Iain were absolutely brilliant in terms of saying, this is a field that we believe that we could be good at. Let's go push it. And I think it's great. There's other technologies out there. So I must say that, I think the things like antibody drug conjugates and immunotherapies, they're there. But every 10 years, we see this new breakthrough in cancer care. We're due now for the next breakthrough. So I'm hoping this is going to be the cancer vaccines field. But again, my silver ball is not perfect. But I think because the trials are going so fast, we'll probably know quicker in this field than other fields.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the next headline come through and getting to talk again about it. So, Lennard, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
It's okay. Thank you, Sophie. It's absolutely an honour. Thank you.
Talking to Dr. Lennard Lee shows how complex the process is to get cancer vaccines to our clinics. But I'm left feeling so hopeful that we're seeing fast progress. To carry on the conversation, I spoke to Dr. Iain Foulkes. At Cancer Research UK, we've been a part of the cancer vaccine story, including funding science that led to the development of the HPV vaccine, which has helped reduce cervical cancer cases by nearly 90% in women in their 20s who received the vaccine at age 12 to 13. But we're entering a new era of cancer vaccines. And I'm joined by Cancer Research UK's Chief Director of Research and Innovation, Dr. Iain Foulkes, to talk about how we're part of the next cancer vaccine chapter. Iain, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Good to be here.
So how is Cancer Research UK part of this new era of cancer vaccines coming through?
Yeah, so we've had a long history in thinking about cancer vaccines, often in the context of prevention. And you mentioned HPV and just some fabulous results coming through now. Recent analysis in 2021, I think, showed that it was preventing cancer in women to the tune of about 90%, I think. Women weren't getting cervical cancer. And we've often thought a little bit much more about, or we've often thought more about how we can use vaccines to actually treat cancer. So this is once cancer's actually established itself. What is it that makes the cancer cells unique, and what makes them stand out from normal cells, such that we can target them with new cancer vaccines? So we have a lot of research going on in that whole space. We've also got new spin-out companies coming through our portfolio as well. So one company called Infinitopes, it's just launched, got some fantastic technology which we think can really help identify those differences between normal cells and cancer cells. And they've developed new ways in which they can introduce the vaccine into the patient and really target those cells in quite a unique way.
And in terms of like a company, what's the difference between funding into a startup and funding into just a research study?
Yeah, so the charity obviously funds a lot of research in this space. But as we sort of progress that research towards the clinic, it becomes very high risk. So there's often a lot of failures. You try to develop these into new medicines. It also becomes very costly. To develop a new medicine, it can cost £1 or £2 billion, which is a huge amount, and we just don't have those resources at Cancer Research UK. So we need to partner with industry, with the biotech community, with pharma, to bring their skills, the scale, and the resources to help us advance these things to the clinic. So when we see something really exciting coming out of our labs, what we tend to do is then start conversations with industry partners or with venture capital investors, and develop an actual spin-out company that other people can invest into. So we've formed about 80 spin-out companies over the years, and they've raised about £3 billion worth of capital, which is accelerating CRUK science. So it really is an opportunity to bring other people into that, bring their money to bear on it, and accelerate things towards the clinic.
And is that where having spin-outs can help make those barriers just a lot easier to overcome and get it to the clinics? Does that sort of venture capital funding help it with that?
Yeah, because venture capital is all about taking risks. They know that a number of the investments they make won't ultimately make it, and they're prepared to take those kind of losses. But equally, when one of those things makes it, they can make a bigger return when they sell that particular drug around the world. But also working with industry, working with partners who've got a huge amount of expertise in drug development, vaccine development. These sorts of things can really help us address the challenges that we see as these things inevitably come up.
And going back to cancer vaccines, there's a lot coming down the line at this point, and I think a lot of people are quite hopeful about the promise of cancer vaccines. What's your opinion about what cancer vaccines can do in the landscape of cancer treatment and helping beat cancer, essentially?
Yeah, I think they're going to play a really important role. At the moment, I think there's only one cancer vaccine on the market that's available, and that's for men with prostate cancer. But there are a number of trials coming through now at phase 3, so that last stage of development. We have one from Moderna, which is looking at melanoma skin cancer. The early results for that look really, really good, really positive. It's showing that it's reducing cancer recurrence in about 75% of patients, which is a really big breakthrough. There are other other vaccines coming through from companies like BioNTech. They're looking in pancreatic cancer. As I said, we've got ours with Infinitopes looking at things like esophageal cancer. So I think there are a lot coming through. There's probably about 300 trials underway right now around the world with cancer vaccines. Some of those are going to make it, and I think it's going to be a really important part of the armory that we've got against cancer. I don't think it'll be the cure-all. I think vaccines are going to be used in combination with other drugs, with surgery, with radiotherapy. But I think we will start to see them have a significant impact on cancer treatment. I think the other exciting thing is back to prevention. We also feel that cancer vaccines can help us prevent cancer at the very earliest stage. So this isn't where you might have an infection, where traditionally you might use a vaccine. This is where you might be at high risk, either through lifestyle or from smoking, that sort of thing. And we can identify the very early changes in people's cells, which we could actually target with the vaccine and actually prevent the cancer from coming through at all. So I think we're going to see vaccines play a very significant part in how we prevent and treat cancer in the future.
And how close do you think that future is, like from this point, 2025?
Yeah, I think a few years to 10 years. It's that kind of sort of time frame. I think we'll start to see things come through quite soon from industry, such as the Moderna vaccine and other things too. But I think over the next sort of 2, 5, 10 years, we'll see more and more of those trials hopefully be successful and it become a sort of new standard of care.
And you mentioned that, you said, look, it's really hopeful, but it's not going to be the cure. It's not going to be the one thing that stops cancer, and then there's going to be other things. And I think something that I guess we need to clarify is that cancer vaccines are being used with other immunotherapies, and it's just as important for us to fund other sources of treatment and not just cancer vaccines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen over history that whenever we develop new treatments, cancer is very adept at evolving, and that's often why you get recurrence of cancer, because it evolves and it evades that particular treatment. It becomes resistant to a particular treatment, and we've seen that time and again. So this is all about how we use these things in combination to target the cancer in multiple different ways, and sort of really try and avoid that sort of resistance from coming at all.
And in terms of the spin out, you were talking about infinitopes. What sort of interesting cancer vaccine science are they bringing to the table?
Yeah, so they're a really interesting organisation. They've got some very unique ways in which they're identifying what it is about an individual's tumour. So they are using very sort of high-tech computational AI type platforms to really identify what it is they should target on a specific cancer. And what they're sort of trying to do is to try to come up with a vaccine that can be applied in multiple people. So not just an individual, but it's applicable across multiple different people. So they have a very sort of unique technology in there. They've also got some really unique technology in how they deliver the vaccine to the tumour. And that's another challenge that we have, is how do you get the mRNA vaccine to the actual site where the cancer is and exert its effect. And they've got some really interesting sort of novel, what we call vectors, to do that as well.
I think just maybe one other point I'd like to talk on is how to, we're talking about how affordable is it for us to access cancer vaccines on a clinical level. And I think a lot of people think about the NHS and how can they support cancer vaccines. What's your take on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that where we are now, which is in the sort of really high innovation sort of part of this pipeline, these are going to be expensive treatments. But I think it's something that we and industry is also looking at as to how we can make these things cheaper. At the moment, the costs are very high because the technology that we're using is really cutting edge. What we know is that over time, those things will become cheaper. So the technology will become more routine. We'll be able to find ways to scale up the manufacture of these vaccines and so forth. So over the sort of 5 to 10 years from when they're first introduced, the costs will drop. But it's undoubtedly the case that there is a sort of high price to pay for that early stage innovation. And we have to work with the NHS and other health systems around the world to work out how we can make these things affordable. That is a challenge in a NHS which is resource constrained. But we know that these are very effective therapies. So the best way that we can do this, I think, is with the incredible targeting that we can have. So we only give the drug to those people we know will benefit from it. Whereas in the past, we've often given drugs to a whole range of patients, hopeful that it will treat some people. And it does treat some people, but not all people. And that's a huge waste of money. I think with vaccines and other targeted therapies, we can find ways of only treating those people that need it most, and therefore save money as well.
And then in terms of do you think the government also has a role to play in getting our cancer vaccines to clinics?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're really pleased with the fact that the government came up with something called the Cancer Vaccine Launchpad. So this is a way in which pharmaceutical companies who've got novel vaccines they want to try can come to the UK, use the NHS, and essentially have a matchmaking system where their vaccine can be matched to certain patient populations around the country to more rapidly put those trials in place and get them up and running quickly. The quicker we can do that, the shorter they are, the cheaper they will be. So I think there are important ways in which we can do this as well. And other organisations, I think Wellcome Trust, are also working on ways in which we can manufacture mRNA vaccines at scale much more cheaply. So there's a lot going on to try and drive that cost down.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Iain, for joining me on this episode.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That Cancer Conversation. You can find more episodes on our channel, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any cancer questions you'd like us to explore for future episodes, let us know in the comments or email podcast@cancer.org.uk.